Morning, everybody. This is another video with regards to my experiences in the Royal Marines. Back in the 80s, if you Google it, you'll find there was a conflict called the Coconut War. This took place in New Hebrides. And New Hebrides was what they call a condominium, jointly ruled by Great Britain and by France. They had a problem where locals took over one of the islands, and the Royal Marines from 4-2 Commando, well, certainly 200 of them, were deployed. Because it was a condominium, the French had to deploy 200 as well, and they sent paratroopers from the Foreign Legion. That was an experience in itself. But this video is called The Hardest Man in NATO, and I'll tell you why. First and foremost, obviously, when we first got out there, we did a bit of beat up, a bit of acclimatisation, training every morning, getting used to the jungle and the humidity. And then eventually we did deploy. That was hindered by the fact that the only airfield on the island was blocked by trucks. So they decided to go in by helicopter, clear the runway, and then bring the other stuff in by Hercs. Anyway, you have to use your imagination a little bit, but imagine a city, not a city, a town near you where a load of Zulu warriors, which is what they were, they're tribesmen, with spears and blowpipes and loincloths, come marching down the road and everyone ran away. That's what we were faced with when we got there. The shops, the supermarkets, everything, the garages were completely empty. And from what I could see when we first got there, there was very little looting took place. Everyone just ran for their lives because these people were quite fearsome. And it had been said that there were people still in the jungle that were cannibals. And of course, all the Europeans just buggered off. And we arrived. And one of the jobs we had originally was securing certain key points around the town. We had the garage, the supermarket. And one of my roles was when the bloke from Lloyd's of London flew over, was to take him to these locations so he could have a look. And they writ everything off, literally wrote the whole stock and the building and everything off, just writ it off completely, which was amazing. I mean, we're talking millions of pounds here. And then, so we were guarding them. And then one night, there was this gunfire. So the quick reaction force, myself, and a captain, I can't remember his name now, he's really good, very good bootneck officer. We raced down to the location. And when we got there, there was a load of, the French were guarding it on that night, because we used to rotate it, the supermarket. And what they'd done, these four, I think it was six, there were 6 lads on guard. And they'd gone into the store, because they're supposed to be patrolling outside the perimeter. They'd gone inside and decided to drink themselves stupid. So we found them in the drink section, surrounded by loads and loads of bottles of wine. And the firing was, they were firing into the roof. And we approached with caution, obviously, and thought, hang on, this is a French problem. So we got on the radio and we phoned, we contacted the French, and they raced down there and arrested the 6 lads. So that was it. And then about 3 days later, I get a radio message. Would you, i.e. the captain, and I took him, go to the French HQ where they're going to carry out punishment on the 6 lads? So I said, yeah, of course. They're driving down there. Now, I've got to explain it. We were in a little old school, an infant school, if I remember rightly. The French, of course, were in a former hotel, swimming pool and the lot. And when we arrived, again, you use your imagination. When we first arrived, see the swimming pool, and we're like, hang on, we got a bloody rough deal here. And then the second thing was the officers had their tables out in the open, and they're having lunch, and they're all sat around breaking bread, drinking wine, and very sophisticated. It looked really, really, I don't know if it was for show, but it looked really good compared to us eating out bloody mess tins and stuff, typical. So we walked up to them, and the duty officer starts talking to our officer, and he invites us over to the table. So we goes over to the table, and they pull up 2 chairs, and we sat on the table, and they started sort of, do you want a bit of this, do you want a bit of that and stuff. And then all of a sudden they said, well, we're going to carry out the punishment for the 6 lads. We want you to witness it, because we want you to make sure that you know that they have been punished for their misdemeanours. So I said, yeah, okay, fine. So anyway, next minute I know, these 6 young lads get marched out in front of the officers with the RSM. Now, after they described the RSM, well, it wasn't an RSM, it was a sergeant major. I've got to explain this guy. And again, he was about 6'2". He must have weighed about 18, 19 stone. He was massive. 1 ounce fat on the guy. He'd been shot 3 times during conflicts in Africa. I think he said he'd been shot twice in Chad and somewhere else anyway, but that's not really the story. And he was telling me how hard he was and how good a soldier he was. I said, you can't be that good, sir. I said, you've been shot 3 times. And he didn't like that. Anyway, apparently, in the French Foreign Legion, and a lot of our warrant officers and RSMs all frown at this, but it's true, that's what he told me, that they were the hardest man in the unit. Nobody messed with them. It wasn't a matter of barking out orders. If he missed a mean, he just knocked you out. And this guy could quite easily do it. I can tell you, he's one of the biggest blokes I've ever seen. He was just ginormous. And he was really, really switched on as well, this soldier. Anyway, I say so experienced as well. Anyway, they marched these 6 lads out in front of the officers. And they were between the swimming pool and the officers' table. And they're all lying in there. And then this bloke starts reading out the charge sheets in French. My French is pretty poor, but limited to bonjour, and that's about it. And he marched them all out and read the charge sheet out to them. And then he looked over to us and he said, I'm going to do the remainder in English for your benefits. And I said, okay, fair enough. So he marches up to the first guy, he stands to attention, and he says, stand to attention. And the guy stood shaky like a leaf, rigid to attention. These guys were probably 18 to 20, no hair at all, just completely shaved off. They were in full fighting order, no weapons. And they were stood there, and he stood them all to attention. And he walks up to the first lad and he goes, you've disgraced the French nation in front of our commando friends. For that, will you accept my punishment? No, sorry. And he said, drunk on duty and firing and discharging a weapon. And he said, yes, sir, I accept your punishment. Bang! He just hit him. We just looked at each other and went, did that just happen? He hit this bloke that hard, he just collapsed. And then he went, good. And he marched on to the second bloke, and this second bloke was absolutely petrified. You can see the fear in his eyes, and he went, will you accept my punishment? He went, yes, sir. Bang! Hit him. He went along the line, and he knocked up. He didn't knock him out. That's not true. He knocked about 4 of them out cold. They just lay there. 2 of them just went down and stayed down. They were just plain dead, I'm sure. Anyway, next thing I know, another bunch of guys are marched on. They grabbed them by the bottom of their fighting orders and drag them off the parade. And the Sergeant Major comes and sits down next to me, and he goes, "That's how we deal with things in the Foreign Legion." I went, "Fair play, mate. Wish we did that." It saved us a lot of paperwork and stuff, but it was just amazing. It was brutal. But that's what they did. You know, sometimes we criticise our troops for their discipline or whatever the case may be. I can honestly say, I mean, I'm a massive believer that we do things right, and we always have done. You know, there was a day when I first joined up, I can remember a couple of sergeant majors who would take you around the back if you misbehaved. I don't want to name any of them, embarrass them, but there were some big units, but nothing like this. I mean, you know, it's just like, bang, see you later. So that's the Foreign Legion for you. There's lots of other stories about what we got up to with the French as well. Like I say, they were really good troops. A lot of them are young, but the senior NCOs and the warrant officer especially were probably, you know, as tough as they get. And the thing is, they had a lot of battle experience, a lot of conflict in their countries that they used to look after. And they were always on a moment's notice to move. Very, very fit and very disciplined. Now, I'm just going to add another story. Now, when the independence was announced, we knew there was going to be an independence, and what the locals said was, well, what we're going to do is we're going to not allow you to raise the new flag, the independent flag of Vanuatu. So what they did was they went around chopping down all the flagpoles on the island, and the only one that was still standing was ours outside the schoolhouse, and that was the one they were going to use for the ceremony. So we had to bloody guard this flagpole. It was ridiculous. Two blokes walking around a flagpole all night, making sure it didn't get knocked down. And just to you know, just to prove the awareness of this Sergeant Major, because I made friends with him, to be honest with you. I did speak to him an awful lot, and he was having a fag outside our HQ. He brought his CO up to meet our CO. And have a chat about something or other, about the independence thing, and how we were going to do it. And we ended up doing a ring of steel around the whole building with one Marine, and then next to him, French paratrooper all the way around the building. That's how we protected it at the end when we did the ceremony. But we sat there, we stood there chatting. It was a really nice day, and he was having his fag and he's waffling on, and then all of a sudden he just looked. What's that? And he just ran. What's going on? I mean, I didn't twig it at all, but there was like a not articulated van, a truck. It was a truck, probably a 7.5 tonner or something like that. And it came up and it stopped right outside our camp, right on the door. We were only about 30 metres from it, and in his head instantly he saw threat. And he legged it straight towards it, and he ran up to the and he jumped onto the ladder that steps up into the cab, and he just pulled out his 9mm and he just stuck it in the bloke's face, and he went drive. And I saw it happen, and I ran with him because I thought he knows something, so I followed him, and he's got his 9mm or whatever it was in this French bloke's this local's face, saying, "Drive the thing." He was absolutely convinced it was a bomb, a truck bomb, and they were going to blow up the flagpole like that. But his awareness was second to none. I mean, he instantly thought, bang, problem, gone. And he made the guy drive. He made the guy drive about 50 metres down the road, and then he still pulled the guy out, jumped all over him. By which time other guys were there and had their weapons on him, checked the van, the truck, and there was nothing on it. But he reckons it was a rehearsal, and they were going to try it on. But we'd all been killed. I mean, if that had been a truck bomb or a suicidal thing, and they pressed a detonation, we'd have all been killed for sure. So I don't know whether I owe him his life or not, but what a lovely man. And in my books, he goes down as the hardest man in NATO. Look after yourself. Anybody else wants to look up the Coconut War, it's quite interesting. Some key people, when you search, Jimmy Stevens was the leader of the rebels. Obviously, it was renamed Vanuatu as it is now. It used to be called the New Hebrides, and it's located between Australia. Imagine Australia's down here, and then you've got Papua New Guinea up here. There's a chain of islands that go between the two. And it's certainly one of the locations we were at used to be a honeymoon, Australian honeymoons, luxury holiday, you know, or lagoons and beautiful, lovely sands. But there we go. That's the story of the hardest man in NATO. French Sergeant Major, been shot 3 times. Probably been shot a lot more times now, but definitely a man of action. Thank you. Look after yourself. Bye-bye.